Hello, this is the Hazel Park Amateur Radio Club ARDC Grant Weekly Update for Monday, October 27th, 2025. So last week I showed this photograph on the left here, and somebody had asked, they said, "Where is that?" And at the time I thought, you know what, that's a great question. So I went back and I looked it up, and there we go. I went back and I looked it up. And so I got this information here that I thought was kind of interesting. And I think I just want to walk through this because it's a very similar situation to what we know. But before we go ahead, let me just see who's here and take a look at that. Let me find my Zoom program here. I want to say hello to everybody who's here. And here, okay, so I see I'm here, so that's pretty obvious. And Len, of course. Hello, Len. AD8FK, good to see you. Mark, W8MAF, great to see you there with the world map in the background. And John, W8TOY, is with us. And thanks, John, for looking after the recordings and all the documentation that's been going out. Hugh, KE8BED, is sitting there. Up, I know you must be up north. That's the up north station, I believe, or at least a rendition of it anyway, which is pretty cool. Mike, N8VDZ, is here, and Les, KF8UU, Al, K8ALH, and Phil is here, K8PR. Hello, Phil. Thanks for joining us. Thank you. Thank
Hello.
you. All right, everybody, that's who's here. So before we start, I just want, well, not before we start, but I was thumbing through some of the records and I wanted to see where this photograph came from, the one on the left here. And so I came up with the Palmetto Amateur Radio Club, okay, in Aventura, Florida. And this is where it actually came from, though. So they're located down in towards Miami, down in the southern part of Florida there. And this is what they're talking about. So basically, the steps that they took in order to do this. Here's a list of the things, and I underlined some of the important points there. So they were installing two repeaters simultaneously. So they had a new VHF repeater, a Yaesu, probably very similar to the one that we had. And then they had to retune the duplexers, and then they put them into what they're calling the spare cabinet. And there's a spare cabinet, and the new cabinet, and the existing cabinet. So they're working with three different setups there. And then they installed the Mirage RF amplifiers. Now, an interesting thing came up, and I'm glad Phil is here too. I got feedback from one of the vendors who was saying that the other version of that Motorola, of the SLR 8000, but the 5700 series, something in that area there. So he was talking about that, and he did raise a valid point about DMR not really needing 100 watts. And okay, I'll go along with that. But then I explained that yes, that's true, but we're primarily an analog still. We're an analog repeater. Maybe we'll transition to DMR, and yet we have to figure out how that's going to unfold anyway. Because if you're an analog listener and DMR comes on, it's that blast of data comes through. It's a little unnerving there. So we'll have to figure that out. But these are some of the interesting steps that they took. Installed the new coax cables, checked the repeater under 2.0 to 1, the SWR, and their RF output is 60 watts. We measured ours. Ours is 80 watts at the output of the duplexers. Okay, so there's probably, I don't know, maybe about 30 feet, I guess, of heliax cable. So maybe it's 1 or 2 dB there, and then the antenna. The antenna currently that we have the superstation vertical there has, I believe, a gain of about 4 dB or something in that line. Anyway, so the I just thought this was interesting to look at because it's pretty much what we'll be doing, something very similar, maybe in our first step. So if you look at our setup, you see here, this is what the room looks like. On the left, on the left here, when you come in the door, which is right to the right, you can't see it, but this is what you see. Here's the our cabinet. You can see it's nice and tidy, or was at this point. These are still pretty much gets the point across. The photos are a couple of years old, but you can see the setup that we currently have. And then these are the duplexers. The idea would be to put in a second cabinet, I guess, facing maybe a 3 foot aisle in between the two, so that the operational part of it would be facing each other as if you're going down an aisle like you would in an equipment room, let's say. Here's the reverse picture from the back, and that's what that looks like there. All right, so if you open the back door, just for example, you have an idea of what we're looking at here. So what we would like to do is to be able to tidy things up, of course, and this is a result of probably 30 years of different uh, different fixes and different additions and subtractions and so on. So you can see it's easy to get the wiring not quite the way it should be. And in addition, I mean, people sometimes ask, well, what difference does it make? Well, one thing, it's the craftsmanship that's involved, of course. But the second thing, too, is some of these wires, there's weight on the end of them. And so that's pulling on some of the connectors. And over time, I think we found one or two. There's a terminal strip here somewhere. I can't quite see it in this picture. But the some of the wires hanging off of it, here it is, it's down here. Hanging off of it were just hanging by a thread. So obviously, we'd like to improve upon that. Okay. What was that? Hmm.
Is that an invisible repeater?
So I'm sorry, say again.
Was that an invisible repeater?
Yeah, you know what? I don't know what happened here. We lost something.
Well,
Let's
you know,
take a look at that. We'll come back to that. Uh, oh, here. So I don't know what happened on that picture, but oh, here we go. There we go. That's the picture we're looking for there. All right, so this is if you open up the front, this is what our front looks like. These meters are meters that came with the rack. They're not connected to anything. Here we have our preamplifier for the UHF, for the remote site. So we have one receive antenna. That antenna comes into the back of this amplifier. So it amplifies it, then it splits it into 5 or 8 different feeds. And these are the receivers. So here you can see the 4 receivers. So the total capability is 4 remote receivers plus the receiver that's in the Quantar. That gives us a 5. We have the capability of doing 5, although only 2 of the 5 I'm sorry, 3 of the 5 are active at this moment. This is a Quantar right down here, right below. It's a 12-volt Aston power supply that runs the repeater. And we also have a Motorola 100-watt RF amp. Okay. Now, the reason that's in there is there was a point when the fusion from that's currently at the UHF site was here, and the output of the fusion is significantly less. So the 100-watt amp was used while it was there. Right below we have the voter, and then below that we have the controller. And this is what the back of all that is looking like. So this is basically what we're building, okay? And it's reasonable, I think. One rack and the wiring that needs to go in between it. here's a close-up of the bottom of the rack. This is the voter here, and this is the SCOM controller. And it's remember the controller. What it does is the controller is a point where it mixes the off-air signals with the internet signals. The various services that we have. But in addition to that, that's where the voices are stored. The new the new controller that we're hoping to get from not SCOM, the RC210 though, we're
Arcom.
what is it?
Arcom.
The Arcom. Thank you very much. Yes, the Arcom RC210. So that has a lot of nifty features in it as well. Okay. Uh, Here we have the backside. Here we have this 400 megahertz cavity. I'm not entirely sure what that is. I guess, well, of course, that would be it's 400 megahertz, so that's UHF. So that would be in line with the receivers that I had just talked about. So if that's still in there or not, it may or may not be. And then, of course, these are the our existing set of duplexers. And what we'd like to do is we'd like to do a measurement on these before we change anything out, and just to do a compare the apples for apples measurement of the characteristics, in particular the tuning and uh, uh, the sharpness of the stop filtering part of the duplexer there. Okay. All right. So enough of that. We saw this last week. Nothing has changed, but we are really hoping to be able to to change it, and hopefully this week. We're ready to rock and roll here. Bill, I don't know if you have anything to add. You can jump in at any point. What?
I do have information from that Sandy
Oh, you do.
Communications.
Okay. Were they? What I was. So this is what we had talked about. But we basically. All right. So we have the expenditure for the antennas, the duplexer. Sorry, this is the IP data link. Which, good news, I looked it up because I was really, really curious. This is a very powerful link. This is capable of about 12 kilometers. So we've got the right piece of equipment. We just have to get it up and running. So we'll focus on that. But in the meantime, anyway, the antenna duplexer, the helix cable, all that sort of stuff, about 10K was spent there. And then unfortunately, we were socked with the about $890 here for the Terras, but I guess that's just a fact of life these days. Okay, so that's where we are. Um, Let me just go down. Oh, all right. So Phil, you want to what can you tell us there? What do you know?
Well, I had called this Sandy Communications last week, and they never left a voicemail and never got back to me. I called him again today and finally got the guy.
Oh, okay.
His name is Jeff.
Yeah.
First question he says is, why in God's name would you want to spend that much money on an SLR 8000 when you could do an SLR 5700 with an amplifier for like about 5,000 less?
Well, that's a good question.
Yeah,
Okay.
but then he mentioned something about, because the SLR 8000 is compact and whatever, if you have an issue with cabinet space, which it looks like you do, it might be a better way to go because instead of having a separate power supply, separate amplifier, and a separate repeater, it's all in one package. So that
Right.
takes up, numbers spaces. But he's talking about, especially with the tariffs and everything, probably is going to be somewhere under 8 grand to get everything you wanted on that list.
Mhm.
I sent him the quote, the RFQ, and he's
Yeah.
gonna fill that out and get that back to me maybe tomorrow or Wednesday. And I'll
With
forward
our
it.
current
I'm sorry, can I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead.
With our current cabinet and the stuff we have in it, do we have all in one or do we have separate units so that, do we have a cabinet space issue?
Um, well, if we go with the, hold on, I'm trying to move my pictures around here. Sorry. It, if we go with this cabinet that I'm about to show you, I don't think we do. Here, um, here. So here we go. So these are the cabinets we currently have, and I think the one on the left comes as close as we need it. If we use the one on the left and we use that idea where if the duplexers fit in the bottom, okay, then that gives us about 3/4 of the rack, which is a good size rack. It's about, judging probably a 7 foot rack maybe. So I don't think we have a lot of space left over, but we have some space left over for expansion. And we don't have to squash everything down, but I think we have enough space there. And again,
I'm
what
I'm
I'm
simply asking because we're spending just so much money in tariffs that if we can
yeah
save it someplace, like the guy said to Phil there, why are you spending all that money when you could? So just
yeah
just
yeah yeah
just
I
wondering
hear you.
about that.
I mean,
I
there is the concept of that having it all in one package is nice. You don't have the extra cables, extra wiring, and so yeah. But there's also this, as he mentioned, if you if something goes, we get a near lightning strike or something like that, you can lose the whole package if it's
right
all in one, or if you have a separate amplifier, and that might get damaged, but you still have the repeater, operating. So
right
there's pros and cons going either way.
right.
Is the cheaper price taking up more cabinet space?
Yes,
Okay.
because
That's what I
you'd
that's what
have
I
the
thought I
repeater
heard, but I
itself.
just wanted to make sure.
I mean, the repeater itself, from the pictures I saw, is like it's only about that thing. It's really
Right. It's
thin.
too here. If you look
That's
on
like
the
a
left,
40 watt. I think it's like a 40 watt output. So you have to have an amplifier, which could take up, that would probably be about, you know, anywhere from 6 whole spaces. And then you'd have to have a power supply for the amplifier. And and so that also will take up more space. Um, but
so to
still,
give
he says you can do that for, uh, let's see, about 3,000 for the repeater, 1,800 for crescendo amp. Is what he recommends. But I looked at their website. I didn't see one that had 100 watt out. Versus, so that's 4,800 versus over almost 8,000 for the SLR 8,000.
hmm, yeah, that's pretty similar. Just to give everybody an idea here, if you look at the screen for a minute. So this is two rack units here. This unit here, this is about the size of the repeater, I believe, right? I think it's two rack units. That's the size of the repeater. This is two rack. This is probably about five. So this is the size of the amplifier.
They got two repeaters in there, a bridge com and is that a
Yeah,
fusion?
they do here. Yeah, I'm just using this for sizing to give us. I mean, we would have one repeater. We would have a controller, which is one rack unit. We'd have a voter. We'll give that two rack units, right? And then the individual receivers, right? The RF receivers from the UHF links, the auxiliary links from the remote receive sites would go in here. So looking at it, I mean, Mike, you do raise a point. I mean, it we will fill this up in this scenario. Now we do have the option, and we can draw this out and have it available what it would look like. And we're at that point where we do need to know that because we're making a rack decision here. So well, I'll have a drawing next the next week. I'll where we can lay everything out. We can talk about the layout, and then we can see how big of a rack we actually need. That's the way to go on that. In this scenario, though, is we do have the options if, let's say, at a future date, and I don't even know whether our duplexers will fit or not, but here you can see they sort of fit. They're sticking out a little bit, but these are a wider diameter than ours, and there's only 4 here. We have 6, so I'm not sure how that's going to play out. But anyway, all right. So something to think about there. All right. Where were we?
Do you want any more information on the quote front or not?
Yes, we do. Please.
Alrighty. Well, I sent out a number of online quotes on Tuesday, immediately after the meeting last week.
Oh, great, Al.
Yeah, one to Atlantic Radio Corp, another to that two-way Radio Corp in Florida, and then one up to Anderson in Bay City. And then I contacted another online quote. You can submit all these quotes online,
Right.
the RFQs or what you're looking for, and then they supposedly respond to you.
Yeah.
And then another one to, what was it? Not CompUSA, but ComUSA, I think it was.
Right. That's right. That's it.
Yeah, and well, here's what I got. Carmen from ComUSA responded like within an hour, and she mentioned to me that they had already quoted this job through Bearcom back in September, and
Yeah.
Taylor was the sales rep for it. I
Right.
think what the guy's name was.
Right.
So I asked her to go ahead and forward me that quote, and she was going to get a hold of the district sales rep and have them email me the quote. So right off the bat, it looks like they already responded to the RFQ, Joe, back in September. They gave you a price from Bearcom. So hopefully they'll respond and give me the same quote.
Aircom never passed it on to me.
No, she's their boss. She's the district manager, regional sale or the general sales manager. She
Right.
said that the Taylor guy, I don't have his name off the top
Yeah,
of my head.
Tommy Taylor. Yeah.
Yeah, he already quoted it back in September. And I said, well, we haven't received it. Please resubmit it and send it to me again, or send it to me as
Yeah.
well.
Yes. Yes. Send it to
So
you.
I don't know. You're going to have to maybe check, Joe, your email, make sure it's not in there, because it would be a nice starting point to see what they're quoting for apples to apples. Now, two-way radio responded to me the next day saying, okay, email response, we'll have a rep get a hold of you, blah, blah, blah. Well, that was on Tuesday, and that never happened. Atlantic Radio Corp responded, and I got into a chat with them on the third day, and they reviewed the RFQ, and they said that they're not interested in the bid. So I don't know what they didn't like about the RFQ. I do know
Really?
there's some kind of, I know there's some kind of stipulative bullet points in there requiring the vendors to do something that they might seem
You know what?
out of compliance.
I thank you for pointing that out. We'll take that out of there going forward. I mean, that was
Yeah,
like a
and I think
boilerplate.
that might have scared a couple people off already. But
Yeah.
Anderson Radio, Joel Erdman,
Uh-huh.
he's the general sales manager for Anderson Radio, and he's a very nice guy. Anyhow, they didn't respond in an email, so I called them 2 days later because you have to keep on top. I
Yeah.
used to do all this stuff, Joe. Trust me, you got to stay on top of it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it gets pushed aside. But
Yeah. Yeah.
he very nice, very polite guy. I explained who we are, what we needed, what we wanted. I said that we're a amateur radio club down here by Royal Oak, Michigan, and Hazel Park. And he goes, amateur radio. He goes, you know what? He goes, the district manager our sales rep is at Ham up here. He's gonna love this. So unfortunately, he was on vacation last
Ah,
week. So I have yet to hear anything back from him, but they seem really excited. They took all the information.
oh,
He says they
great.
definitely don't have an 8,000 VHF in stock. He says usually what people are ordering are the UHFs, which is, with all the companies, business, bands, whatever, right? Commercial, all
Right,
UHF. So
right.
he says the VHF would definitely be a special order. And I asked him, well, just out of curiosity, what's the estimated amount of time for a VHF repeater when you have to get a program in order? And he said usually around 4 weeks. So we're still within the window
Yeah,
before the
yeah,
first.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. So we
So,
can do that. Yeah, I guess there's two things to look at, and Phil raises the interesting point about getting using the amplifier. I mean, but being reasonable because we are getting hit really hard with these tariffs, right? So thinking about alternatives is something we need to do. I will say there's two parts of it. I looked at the comparison between the two models, the 5700 series and the 8000. There's two aspects I think we're primarily concerned with. One, of course, is the RF part of it, the amount of power. But I think the quality of the signals are pretty much the same. It's just an issue of one is 100 watts and one is less. The second part that we're concerned with, of course, is the remote functionality, right? And the surface scratching that I did, I was able to compare the two, and they're almost identical. I mean, the 8000 has a few more in-depth screens and analytics. So, but the 5700 series is practically identical in terms of the functionality, so that from that aspect of it, we could go either way with it.
well, I
So,
explained that to them as well. I say, anything's open for suggestion at this point. If they know of
right,
something that might work better for us, and any
yeah,
peripherals that we might need, especially in addition to one or the other. Like we don't
right.
know, is a voter needed with the 8,000? Does it have the capabilities to find the cleanest signal itself? Does it even need a voter? Does it have a controller in it? A lot of these new repeaters have controllers on board. You might not even need to purchase a controller.
Well, and that's an operational question and a good one. So, yes, in a commercial application where you link multiple repeaters together, the controller is adequate. It's a pretty basic controller. From the aspect of amateur radio, it would work. It would work. But we're using our controller for a couple of other things in terms, being able to bring together the IRLP aspect, being able to have the voices and some of the other more unique things to amateur radio. So for us, I think to put a few dollars into the controller, give us that flexibility, is certainly worth considering. But in the end, we'll see. I mean, listen, just on the antenna alone, that was quite a lump sum we had to give away. So, we'll see how we proceed.
Well,
Uh,
I'll forward email any quotes that I do get instead of waiting until next Monday.
yes, please, and let's
And
stay in touch. Yeah, you and I should stay in touch here, and anybody else too who's getting the quotes in.
and do you
Email
think can you
is the
check
best.
your inbox
I
back
will.
for
I will.
September
I,
and maybe your trash if it still hasn't been dumped yet and see
yeah.
if you have anything from Bearcom?
I will do it again. I will certainly do it again. I did a pretty thorough search last time, but listen, there's a lot of stuff, and the amount of junk emails is just amazing to me. It's about 10 to 1, really. Uh, but yes, I'll take a look. All right, well, Al, well done. Thanks for that. Let's keep moving forward. Last week, somebody, and I think it was Mark. I'm not sure who it was exactly, but somebody had mentioned something about slide rails. So I found these pictures of the repeater, so you can see the side of them. And yeah, they definitely would take sliding rails. And from the way it looks like the top does open. It opens up from the top. So, we'll see how it goes. But it is something I just thought was an interesting thing to think about.
Hey, Joe, another thing you mentioned, if you're gonna go with the ARCOM, you want to have a remote PC there that you can remote into. So having one of those PCs that are on rails, you've seen those, like in data centers, probably a
Right.
really nice thing to have.
So you're saying I did have a conversation with John AAAUU, who can't join us on Mondays because he's teaching the general class course. Unfortunately, can't be here with us, but we did have that conversation. He had something laid out in his mind what he thought would work. But would you just tell us that again? Just what you were
Well, if
thinking?
you ever go into like a data center, they usually
Yeah.
have basically it's like a laptop PC built into a rack, a sliding rack. So they pull it out,
Oh, right. Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
the
Yep.
display just pops up, and there's a keyboard there.
Yep.
It takes about that much room.
Yep. Yep.
That would,
Yep.
and it has its own display and everything. That would probably be just what you'd want for
Uh,
that. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's a great idea. I know what you mean. Yeah. Rack mounted a laptop. And yeah. Yeah. And you could use it as a tabletop too if you have to just write something down. That's back in the days when we wrote things down. Anyway, okay, great. Sandy, so you just talked about that. I was looking for the slide as you were talking. I couldn't find it then, but so right, exactly. So we have that North Georgia. So I spoke with and the North Georgia guys got back to us too, which I thought I had printed it out. But they were the ones who offered they have in stock the 5700 series, and they have it. And let me just see if I can. This is Fisher, BlueSat, Arcom. All right. I guess I do not have it. One of the things I was hoping we could talk about a little bit more, but Andrew. Oh, Andrew is here. Oh, Andrew. Okay. Are you there, Andrew?
Yeah, how's it going?
I'm fine. How are you?
Good.
Good. Um, do we want to go through your slides there?
Yeah, do you have them pulled up?
I can do that. I
So,
have the
just so
technology to do
everyone's
that. Yeah.
on the same page of what the voter is and isn't. Um, so what is a voter? So the repeater can only repeat the signals that it can hear. If you have an HT, you're not really going to have the power or the height or anything like that to be heard over a long range. So we can put these, listening receivers around the area. However, when you have more than one receiver, you need to decide which one is the best signal to use. Otherwise, you could just be transmitting noise or something like that. So from the remote site where we get the signal, we have to beam it back somehow to the main site for it to be voted on and transmitted. So that could be done using any medium, RF, phone lines, or even the internet. Depending on what you use, though, the method of transmission can impact the signal quality. For example, RF's probably going to be a lot noisier than the phone line, but if you digitize it and then transmit it over IP, either that's the internet or 44net or what have you, you're not going to have any noise added onto the signal. So what are the different methods of voting? The one that we use right now and the simplest one is to determine which has the most or least noise on it and choose that signal. A little bit more complex, but still in the analog domain, is looking at the signal and the noise and determining the best signal to noise ratio and picking that one. Most of the newer systems use digital voting where the signal is measured directly at the receive site and then transmit it over with the signal strength and a timestamp and then reassembled at the main site. And what that allows you to do is, you ignore any noise on the link. All you're getting is the exact signal as it was received. And then, that signal, that timestamp, and that audio snippet are transmitted over IP. So noise voting, as you can kind of see here, perfect voice signal will have mostly frequencies below 4 kilohertz. As the signal degrades, you have more and more high frequency noise. So the simplest form of voting
Hey,
simply just kind of puts a
Andrew, Andrew,
Yeah.
can you expand your screen? We're seeing your whole desktop and not just the slide, and it's really hard to see.
Is that better?
That's a little better. Yeah, perfect. Thanks.
So as you have a higher noise, that's going to be less and less of the chosen signal. The drawback to this method is if you have a signal with a low signal and a low noise, and then you have a signal with a little bit, better voice but higher noise, where the human ear would be able to kind of prefer the one with the better voice but higher noise. This kind of method will just pick whatever has the lowest noise, regardless if it's the best signal or not. So how is that done? This is just a schematic from our current voter. There's 8 of these circuits. So we take the audio in here, it goes through op amp, and this is just to ensure that all of the signals are at the same level. So there's like a test point here to adjust the gain. So everything coming in should be at the same level. It goes through this high pass filter right here, and then this kind of sampling and holding averaging filter right here to get a voltage that's proportional to the noise. So the more high frequency noise there is, the higher this voltage is. The microcontroller looks at these voltages, whatever's the lowest, it assumes that's the best signal, and then it changes this multiplexer right here to pick that signal where it's piped out to the transmitter. So as I mentioned before, you could potentially pick the wrong signal if you're looking just at the noise. So the better way to do it is to compare the signal to noise ratio. So that method is similar to the previous one, except you also have a low pass filter in there. And then you'll compare, everything under 4 kilohertz to everything above 6 kilohertz. And you could make a little bit better assumption there as to what the better signal is. If you're doing this on an analog link, you're still vulnerable to noise coming in via the transport link, but ideally, you'd still kind of vote better because you have that extra information of the voice signal. So IP voting uses the same principle as signal to noise. However, instead of measuring the SNR at the main site, it's done at the receive site. So you don't have to worry about any outside influences. What the remote receiver hears is what you're actually, grading. It digitizes that audio along with the signal information and a timestamp. This does require a GPS clock for an accurate time reference. And then it sends that audio signal strength and timestamp over an IP network, whether it be the public internet, a private point-to-point link or anything like that, just anything IP based. It sends it back to the main setup. And this also does require All-Star Link, which I believe we already have. So the All-Star Link votes and then says, okay, I'm going to use this audio and broadcast it out. One of the things that this All-Star Link with these boards can do is they could also support simulcast. So if we were to have, in the future, another transmitter somewhere, you could actually set it up so that both are transmitting the right, everything. So you have a nice, good, wide area signal coverage. So this is kind of just like a block diagram so you could see the signal path where you have RF coming into a receiver, the receivers hooked up to this RTCM interface along with the GPS time. And then every, however many milliseconds, it will send out an IP packet with the timestamp, the signal strength, and the audio. And that gets sent over to the main site or wherever, the All-Star computer is. And then you can kind of see here the reason that the GPS time is needed. There's no guarantee that the packets will arrive in order. So you need the timestamp. So that way you're comparing apples to apples signal wise, as well as making sure you could reorder the audio when it gets back. And then the stream with the best signal to noise is chosen. And then it'll kind of just use that, those IP packets to rebuild the audio and retransmit. So with that, there's 4 different proposals for voters. The first would be to use the existing remote receive hardware up to and including the voter. This is the lowest cost and quickest option. However, the current voter, as we know it, is a source of several problems. And then that would also take off the remote receive functionality because we'd have to remove this from the current rack, put it on the new rack, and it wouldn't require any changes at the remote sites. So proposal 2 would be to install a new SNV12 voter, and that's a signal to noise voting. We'd probably have to get these used because I don't think they're still built anymore. It is a higher cost. And in theory, we could use everything on this side kind of to the left of the signal change. But again, we'd still be susceptible to any noise on the transport layer. Proposal 3, probably not going to happen because it's a very long lead time and there, no support. But during my research, there are several clubs that are running their own kind of custom comparators for voting. So that is an option, but like I said, probably not a good one. And then proposal 4 would be going to the all-star voting, the IP voting, and that would kind of future-proof everything, but there would be a learning curve for everything. We wouldn't be able to use our existing remote links. We'd be able to use all of the receive hardware, but then we need the RTCM, a GPS receiver, as well as some kind of a backhaul, either it be the internet, 44net, or another high-speed RF IP link at each site. And like I kind of mentioned here, like for now, we could use the internet with future migration over to the 44net or other IP over RF system. And I'll get into that in a little bit. So this is kind of the what we would need at each site. You can see each RX site. You'd have a receiver, the RTCM, and the GPS, as well as a router of some sort, either internet link or RF link back to the main site. At the main site, you'd have a similar setup, RTCM with the repeater for the receive audio and then transmit audio to the controller with the GPS, and then the All-Star Link PC that's running the All-Star program would have to be here as well. Like I mentioned with the backhaul, we could use the internet for the time being until we get everything over to a off-grid network, we'll call it. I know talking with Sean, the hospital already has 44net there. So in theory, we can get on that. And then we kind of, bring our main site onto that, then the airport site, and then anything, any new sites we would pick, we could hop right onto 44net.
What is the 44net?
That's the ARDC's, they have the whole 44 dot whatever block of IP addresses for ham radio.
That's right.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
And one of the things that this would allow us to do is, in theory, we can have remote receive sites just on the internet for ease of connection. And we'd still have hardened remote receive sites right on 44net. So say, for example, we were supporting some kind of event, over up in Romeo or something like that. We could put a receiver with the RTCM hook it up to the internet, get good coverage up there, event's over, take it down, whatever. And stuff like that, where if you have it, you can kind of do stuff like that where you have a, onesie, twosie, temporary, remote receive sites. So here's just the comparison. This is the last slide, of the kind of, the four proposals. When you look at it, really, aside from the cost, the All-Star IP voting is the way to go. The one downside is that it will cost about 400 a site between the RTCM, the GPS receiver, and whatever, plus whatever backhaul we'd have to put in. And then it would also be the same at the main site. The SNV12 would be a one-time purchase, but then we'd be able to use everything at the remote receive as is. And then limit on sites. Right now we're at 8. SNV12 would be 12. If we designed it ourselves, it would be, however. And then All-Star, it's bandwidth dependent. I believe it's 100K per link. So you could have, if you had a 1 meg connection, in theory, you'd be able to have 10-ish. And if you had a higher speed, you'd have, more. So, yeah, like I said, everything else, there's really no negatives to the All-Star. It's just not necessarily either the best, kind of medium, but there are no negatives, just, average and positive. So, and then
Right.
I think Joe has the link, or I could resend it to him. So we could include this in whatever gets sent
Yes,
out.
I do have the link. Yeah. Yeah. This is good. I do have a couple of questions and a couple of comments. First of all, I like the idea of actually taking that measurement right at the main site, at the end of the link, because if you take that measurement at the remote receiver, it's important information for that area, but there's that whole link to consider, and some of the noise that we have on some of our links could very well be coming from the secondary relay link. So that's something that has to be brought into consideration. The other thing is we do have to, in order to use All-Star, you have to have internet connectivity at all the sites. You did mention the hospital, and we might in Detroit where we currently are. It's unclear to me, but it would seem that if we would be allowed to use their network, although I think it's a closed network, I'm not sure exactly. But my point being is, or my question is it possible to use the software or the process that is used for All-Star, but have it locally, have it functioning locally? You know what I mean? So I don't know whether that's possible or not.
It depends so on a local area network, yes, but it has to be IP based. So if you could
Right.
take one of those Ubiquity dishes and get a good connection between the two sites, you could use that.
Great.
So
Yeah.
it's just any network that's IP based. It doesn't necessarily have to be the internet, but if the internet or there's some existing network access there, it'd be
Yeah.
easy just to hop on that.
Yeah, so it's the platform basically is what you're saying. But yes, and those links can use the IP interface. As a matter of fact, the idea going forward would be to have those links digitized, and by digitizing, I mean by making them IP compatible, so the signal can either go over the microwave or go over the terrestrial link. So one size fits all in that case. All right. Well, Andrew, thank you for that. That was very interesting
That was a
and
very clear and concise presentation, Andrew.
very nice.
Very
Very,
good.
very nice. Thank you. So we'll have to keep our eyes and ears open now. We'll take a look at where we think we want to go on that. What would you, so you're recommending the All-Star So we'll have to take a look at that and see, how that plays into it at all. But thanks for that. That
Yeah.
was very good.
Well, I would say I wouldn't necessarily recommend putting the expenses and effort and all that into replacing it with another analog voter. I would say either we keep what we have, with knowing what the drawbacks are, or go to the All-Star.
Right.
Yeah,
That
I
was
agree.
that was my question, Joe.
Uh-huh.
It's either going to be one or the other, and we don't need redundancy in a $5,000 voter and
Right.
then going over to All-Star. But if it's a fail-safe and we're not dependent on the internet, and there's another, off the grid formula, I guess that Andrew was mentioning, that we're not, conducive into being needed on the internet or having any kind of IP access in case it does go down, we'll still be able to communicate. So I think definitely, perhaps maybe look into the future and the way everything's going, that's probably definitely the basket to put all the eggs in.
Yeah, and you might want to
Yeah.
check with the county, Joe, because I'm pretty sure in Macomb County, um, that we are using, well, I know we are using All-Star, but I believe the county is also on its own network, including Warren, who's its own, has its own emergency manager.
Right.
But it's on its own network. So if the internet goes down, we don't care. We're still on the internet. We're on our intranet, but
Right.
we're
Have their
still
own dedicated
communicating. We're
server.
still gold.
Right. Yeah. Well,
But Oakland County may have that very same thing in place with, with
yeah.
their emergency communications. And since you're the backup for the EOC, it would be important to have you on that if they had that.
Right.
Mm. Well,
Well, that's
would have the answer to that would be Sean.
yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll ask him at breakfast.
Breakfast. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, good.
Does Sean know what's going on with Oakland County Emergency Management?
He's talked to Oakland County, I know that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Mark might have a good
Cool.
idea as well.
And boy, now that I've started using All-Star for a few things, I've all of a sudden become a fan.
Have you? All right.
It,
All
it
right.
is,
Well,
it's based on telephone circuitry. The whole All-Star concept is based on telephone. Well, you know how good telephones can sound.
right.
See,
Right.
Andrew? And, and the voice quality is just so good. It might even be too good for ham radio.
Yeah. When you think about it, we're talking about the remote sites, right? And if the
Yeah.
remote sites did go down, I mean, I guess it's a matter of the value that they add to the system in an emergency. As long as the main site stays up, that's what's primarily important. But I guess for the
Right.
coverage, I mean, we'll have to toss these ideas around and
Plus, I think you can add individual nodes at that point too. So
yeah,
every base station in the
Yep.
club could become a node, and that way whoever's
Yeah, I have
closest-
my own node for Macomb County.
Yep.
is that right? Is
So
that
you
right?
become a remote receive site in itself.
Yeah. Well, um, Andrew brings up a good point. It's like we're doing this whole thing, using modern technology, digital technology. Why would we want to use an analog voter? I mean, that certainly rings true to me.
That's
But
one of the reasons you can't find many of them anymore because they're archaic,
yeah.
right? They're
Well, there are a
outdated.
bunch. There's about five or six. I saw them between 300 and 600 on the internet. I mean, I don't know. It depends on how many cards there are because you could load it. It comes as a frame, and I think it has dual power supplies. And then you add the cards depending on how many inputs you want. It does, I believe, up to 8 or 9 inputs, something like that. A little less than a dozen, I believe. But it depends on, you have to buy the cards for it. So in our case, we would only buy 5 cards because that's all we really need. Although our current voter can take up to 8 inputs, we just only use 5 of them.
Am
So,
I correct in my understanding that the issues that we have with the voter are not because it's old and broken down and aged and worn out. It's just because that's the technology.
Well, partly. I believe that the big part in this type of system, as Andrew described, when you're just measuring, you're quantifying the level of noise, and you're just measuring noise, it basically throws the signal out of the equation. Okay, so that means that everything has to be totally balanced. In other words, the amplitude of the signal that's received at all four remote sites and the any additional amplification or degradation that the auxiliary link adds to the originally received signal would make a difference too. So the idea is as all these signals are coming into the main site, being able to select the one that sounds the best, the question is, okay, we understand as human beings what we can hear and what we can't hear, but how do you translate that into arithmetic so the machine can do it? So if we're going to have the analog system that we have, those links have to be absolutely totally balanced, and they're not. And that's part of the problem there.
And
I
even
think
once you do balance them, they don't stay that way.
then they don't stay
Ah.
balanced because it's an analog system and things are
So
drifting
it's
and right.
has a
Yeah.
lot to do with the nature of the technology.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'd be all for All Star
It's
too.
let me put it this way. It's a technology that works, but it takes a lot of maintenance to keep it going. It's very very high maintenance if you know what I mean. So
Oh yeah, they
if
do
you've
have a lot of
got the time
engineering.
and effort and willing to keep everything and totally peaked up all the time, then I'm sure it would work better than it does. It's not perfect, but it certainly could work better than it does. That's for sure. But it's labor intensive versus a digital system. I'm assuming, as based on my experience with other digital systems, you set it up and you come back and visit it in like 5 years, see how it's doing. But so so that's one way to look at it. All right. Any other questions about that? So we'll be doing that. So we would like, okay, so Alan and I will be in touch and we during the week. What else do we have here? So, oh, the Archon, I think we're pretty much in agreement that the controller, this is what we're doing. I see no reason. I mean, if anybody on this call sees a reason why we should be looking at other things, but I think this is the way to go. I say we do the deal. And so,
What deal is this, Joe?
well, I think we start looking for the vendor for the Arcom RC210, and according to Phil, right, Phil, that that is can be bought right from the manufacturer. Is that
Yeah, it's the only place you can get them, unless you
the
find a
only
used
place?
one somewhere. But and then I think you gotta. I don't know if it includes the case, the with the black front. And mine has a white front, but mine's
Yeah,
an old
yeah,
one.
right, right.
But I don't know if that's included or not.
Oh, okay.
Might have to check that.
So we'll take a look at that. And I have a question. So somebody brought this up and it's like, oh yeah, I forgot. It's like one of those aha moments. But I remember during that transition from serial to, internet connectivity, there's like these dongles you can buy and you plug them into the serial port. And then on the other end, they have an RJ45 and you plug that into the internet. And there's like a little server or something like inside of those things. Do you think that something like that, first of all, do you know what I'm talking about? And if you do, would something like that work, or would using a remote laptop, which that slide out, the one
Well,
that plugs on
the
directly to the
software
computer,
runs on a PC.
the
That's what you
software,
use
right?
for programming. I mean, if you really wanted to
No,
do that, you could do
yeah,
everything with touch tones, which is a real pain in the butt.
okay,
Yeah,
okay,
but you want to use that software, and that needs to run on a PC.
yeah,
I don't
yeah,
think it'll even run on a Mac unless they've changed it
Oh, yeah,
So you want to, and it's all done with just a serial port. They got
yeah,
a DB25 on the back. It basically only has three wires on it, transmit,
right.
receive, ground.
Yeah, yeah,
You just want you gotta hook that to your computer to go up to you do everything on the PC, then you just
right.
send the configuration either in whole or just changes. And
I
that's real
see.
nice. If you just change one thing, you can just say just update changes, and that's almost
Yeah,
instant. If you want to upload the whole configuration,
Yeah.
it takes probably a minute or two.
okay.
But
Yeah, yeah, that sounds like the way to go. Well, I say that we have agreement on these two items. So we have allocated, let me just go back to the spreadsheet here. Hold on, just go with me.
How close are we to purchase the repeater?
I'm sorry, what'd you say, Les?
How close are we to purchase the repeater?
Oh, look at this. This is why I couldn't find this is why I couldn't find Andrew's um this is why I couldn't find Andrew's presentation because I had it integrated into this one. All right. Anyway, sorry. So yeah, so here's basically what we have currently on our docket. But before I go there, Les, you asked a question. I forgot what you said. Say it again, please.
I asked, how close are we to purchase the repeater? Will we have the repeater by the first week in November?
I don't think we'll have it in our hands by the first week in November, but we'll certainly have an paid invoice by the 1st of November, yes.
Okay.
First of
It's
November is
just,
less than a week away.
I
oh,
know. You
geez,
got
you're
to give.
right.
We've
Can I
been.
say the first week in November? And let me say that, okay? Thank you,
I
thank
was
you,
gonna
Len. That's
say
right. The
the short
goblins
the
are,
short answer, Les, is no.
what was the long answer? What was it? Will we have it by November? No, not by
I
November.
know. I'm saying
By
that
the
will
first
we
week.
have the purchase order in by the first week in November? We keep
Absolutely, you're right. But this is the week when this is the week we'll do that, barring any
any weird
hurricanes come through or
circumstances from
anything.
Trump.
Anyway, all right, okay, all right. What else do we have? Do we have anything? I don't think I have anything more that new, and I'm with Les 100%. Let's get this thing. Let's get this done and finished and moving ahead. All right. The other part of it, and I just want to say this, is I'm working with David and Tony on our whole IP scheme, and I ran it by John Teagard, and he's got a couple issues to say about it, but basically, this is the idea. Now, this looks very, very large, and it is. But if we're going to have an addressing program, you need to take the whole system into consideration. So that's what we pretty much have created here. And this is each of the sites, what the IP address would look
You're
like.
not sharing.
And I'm not sharing. And I'm not sharing. How could that be that I'm not sharing? Because, thank you.
Everybody's been full screen. You've been not sharing since Andrew got done.
Oh, okay.
So everybody that's been talking has been full screen.
Oh, okay then. Well, hold on then. Let's
Or will be when I publish.
okay. I'm sharing now though, right?
Yes.
Good. Okay. Oh, I didn't know I was not. So I'm sorry. So let me just quickly review this just for and I'll send you the slides too. But here's what we had. Oh, now I have to get my pointer out, of course. Here's what we had uh, budgeted, just roughly. And again, this is taking the lump sum, dividing it proportionally between the categories, like this thing here, yeah. So we divided it between, took the lump sum, $26,742, and divided it in this way based on the descriptions of the what was described that Andrew had pulled together. So using that just as a general form, okay, it's just to give us some guidance. So that's how we were able to set up our expectation. So now, if we can stay within these limits, then we're going to be okay. So we got about $6,000 allocated for the repeater equipment rack. We can give that back. So that's really that would go towards the tariff, the $800 tariff. So that knocks that down a little bit anyway. Got $300 for the controller, and that was based on estimates that I received online. It seems a little low to me, but we'll get some firm bids in this week. A signal to noise comparator, well, that's the voter there. So you can see we have about 500 for each of the other items. If we can stay within these numbers, then we will be right on target. And the
Joe,
net,
can't you go back a slide? For the digital radio links for the external remotes, can't those be purchased as needed out of our current budget
yeah,
if necessary? Because we don't
well,
need all 4 links. We don't have 4 sites to put them up at yet.
right, correct,
So you could
correct.
save $1,500 right there and put that toward the front end for a repeater.
Yeah, the issue is then we don't ever have, I mean, then we'll have to raise the additional money if we do it in the future. But you're right, that does provide us a little bit of headroom. And again, we're being hit with all these unexpected charges that nobody can really tell us until the actual purchase is made, depending on what's going on. So that's our headroom right there. Okay.
The rack, you already have 1 or 2 donated.
Yeah, the rack, yeah, that can go towards paying off the tariff for the antennas, towards that 800, the where it says equipment rack there. That's not an issue anymore.
How is the thing going with the apartment of getting the permission to put the antenna up there and repeater?
We don't have any further progress from this week to the last week. Working with Mark, Les, those are great questions. There's no further progress. I will say that we did have a service a call there. John A8UU and somebody else I forget who it was. Maybe it was Mike, I think. The VPC Mike, I think. I'm not sure. But anyway, so they visited and he took the circulator that was purchased and put it up there just to see how that fit into the grand scheme of things. So he was up there and they did a little bit of work. They brought down the antenna, the other link, the digital link, so we can put the two antennas together on the ground, and we'll get those up and running, hopefully over the winter, and then in the spring we can get them back up on the roofs. So we did have that activity. So there is no pressure on us to leave at the moment. But with that in mind, we do have to have a plan B. I went. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Anybody have any last questions before we stop here? We're a little bit over time. If not, I'll say 73's good night, and we'll talk again soon.